Tessa with Hip Over 50. So today I'm going to talk to you, those of you that are thinking about retiring to England, perhaps from America. I know I get a lot of comments and questions on my website. People just want to take advantage of the lifestyle over here, and I don't blame them. So is it possible? How hard is it to be a retiree and move to England? Well, I have to tell you, it isn't easy. So I just want to get that right up front. It's not the easiest thing to do. There used to be a retired person's visa, but for some reason they've discontinued that. So that is no longer an option. So there are two ways that you can come over and live here and enjoy all of the culture and history that England has to offer. One is as a temporary resident, which is kind of what I recommend. I have a 6-month guide to living in England, and I think the rule that you can live here for up to 6 months is a great way to test drive living in England, or to have the best of both worlds, have a home here and a home in the US, for example. You are legally able to buy a home here and open a bank account. Now, you aren't able to live in it full time, but that is something to consider. So that's one way to do it. Come over for up to 6 months at a time. The second way is basically to go through the process of getting a visa. And this will allow you to become a citizen or have what is called the right to remain. How do you live here full time, and what would you have to go through in order to get full-time citizenship here? Well, you'd have to have a family member. For example, that's one route, a family member who is a British citizen, or you could be the partner of a British citizen. Now, if you're a family member, that could be, it could be a child, it could be a parent. That will give you an entree. You will still need to get a visa, but that is an entree into living here full time. As a partner of a British citizen, you don't necessarily even have to be married. You can be a long-term partner. You do have to sort of document what exactly your partnership is. Obviously, you can't just run out and get a British citizen as a partner on Tinder or whatever, but it can be done. So that is one way that a lot of folks are able to come over here and stay with their loved ones and retire over here. The other option would be if you happen to already have that retired person's visa and you can extend it. But I'm assuming that if you're in that position that you wouldn't be watching this video. The third option is if you've settled in the UK before and then you want to come back and retire, or if you've been in the UK legally for 10 years, that will get your foot in the door. The other option is if you have at least one British parent who was born in the UK, then you may be a citizen and not need a visa. That is the case with my son. He was able to get a British passport on my birth record. The third option, which is a little bit unusual, would be if you had American citizenship, for example, and you also had Canadian or commonwealth citizenship, and you had one grandparent born in the UK. So that link will entitle you to qualify through something called the ancestry visa. Unfortunately, it's only available to folks who actually have a citizenship in a Commonwealth country, which would be Canada, Australia, New Zealand, for example. So that is one option. I do know of one couple where that was the case. If your partner has both dual Canadian and American citizenship, that would be a great way to get in to retire here in the UK. So I'm assuming that if you're retiring here, you're not planning on working or studying, but if you were, those are also viable options, would be to get a visa for work or a visa for study. So that is something you could also consider. So why would you want to retire to the UK? Well, of course, the pros to retiring here full-time are you have freedom of movement. You can come and go as you please. You can buy that property and live in it as long as you want. Nobody's sort of looking at the clock and saying, okay, time to go. So that is a benefit to being a full-time resident. You also have access to free or very low-cost healthcare through the NHS. And of course, you could get immersed and really get stuck in, as they say here, in the local communities and culture. So that is a huge benefit to being able to live here as a full-time resident. But the downside or the cons to retiring here full-time and making this your home and becoming a citizen is, if you're American especially, you will face potentially additional taxation on any income that you have, and possibly a higher cost of living, depending on where you're moving from and where you're moving to. But basically, most housing, I think, not all, but in a lot of desirable spots in the UK, you will be paying more for housing. And of course, then you have to consider the distance factor from loved ones and family in the US. How often will you want to go back and forth to visit them and keep those connections alive? So, a lot to consider, but that's why I think the 6 month rule is really ideal. I really think it gives you the best of both worlds. And there isn't any time constraint on that 6 months. Unlike the current laws for, let's say, as a British citizen, if I want to go visit France or Italy or anywhere in the EU, I can only go there for 90 days out of 180. And then it's like, boom, you're out. That isn't the case in England. They are not counting the clock. They're not saying, okay, you've been here for 6 months out of a year or that is not the case. Now, you can't use that rule to try to, jimmy your way into living here full time, because the border force will keep track of your comings and goings. They will want to know when you're going to leave. And of course, they'll want to know where you're going to be staying here when you come over. So, you can't take, unfair advantage of it, but I'm saying there isn't any rule that prohibits you from staying any particular time within a particular time, if you know what I'm saying. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that gave you some ideas of whether or not, as an American, you're able to retire here in England. And I wish you all the best of luck. If I can help at all, go check out hipover50.com. I have a lot more information on visa information and details, links, great links that you can follow and find out if you qualify for any of these solutions that I put out today. So like or ask questions in the comments, subscribe, and I will talk to you again soon. Thank you for watching.